Hello, Sarah Millsap here for the 12 days of Christmas with Totally Beads. A very Merry Christmas to you all. I hope you're having a wonderful time. Now, you know me, I love my chainmail. Couldn't be 12 days of Christmas without a bit of chainmail weave. I'm going to show you today how to do the Helm weave. Now, this is using two sizes of our jump rings, and it's a beautiful flat weave. It's so comfortable to wear, and actually one of the more simple to achieve out of chainmail as well. So don't be scared if you haven't tried already. Here's the gorgeous bracelet. You can see that it's got a beautiful accent rose gold colour, a nice flat weave. So of course you can wear it beautifully. Nice and flat, so it's nice and comfortable to wear. And I'm also going to show not only the bracelet, but we're going to start off with a nice pair of earrings as well. Now I've added in a faceted crystal in here too, just for an extra bit of bling. It's Christmas after all. And the earrings are nice and simple to achieve. This is only using one cluster of our weave, but of course if you've got longer hair and you want to make more of a statement, you can create these in longer lengths as well. I'm going to show you how simple it is to do with a couple of tips and cheats in there as well. So here is your Helm chainmail weave. Okay, so the materials and the tools I'm going to be using, I've got a couple of eye pins, I've got my 6mm faceted beads, and I've got two sizes but two colours as well of my jump rings. So I've got the 8mm silver and an 8mm in rose gold and a 6mm silver jump ring as well, and that's the diameter. And I'm going to need some cutters for my eye pins when I'm looping these on, and I'm going to be using my round nose and my chain nose for my actual chainmail. Okay, so first of all we're going to make a pair of earrings because it's the same technique to then make your bracelet as well, and of course earrings are a bit quicker to make, so it's a nice way to get used to the technique with little small quantities. So I've already prepped some of my jump rings. These are straight from the packet and I've already pre-opened some. And this just makes it easier when you're actually making because you can hold them, you can keep hold of your work, and then of course pick up pre-opened. So when we're opening our jump rings, I'm going to hold one side in my flat nose pliers, and I'm going to take my round and I'm taking my dominant hand towards me. And that way, when I put them down on the mat, when I'm working and I'm holding my work, because I've used my dominant hand to go forward, it's that side that's poking up, and that's really helpful. So I'm going to prep a few, and I'm going to do the silver and the rose gold. So silver is going to be my prominent colour in this set, and I'm using the rose gold as the accent. So your accent colour, you will only need the larger jump rings of, and the smaller ones in this case are going to be my silver as well. So again, dominant hand towards you, and you can see always making sure that that split in the jump ring is up at the top, dominant hand towards. So I'm opening these reasonably wide. It doesn't have to be too far, just a little knock to open those up. And my rose gold are going to be my feature colour in this one. Now I am going to open these a little bit further than my silver ones. It's just going to make it easier when I'm actually making it. So again, so that you've got a nice grip, I'm using my round nosed top to bottom, and it puts less pressure and you're not going to dent your jump ring like that either. If you were to hold right at the tip, the chance of you chipping it and denting it is quite high. So I give myself that nice grip. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to start with a closed jump ring. Now you can see from the pack, it's actually slightly split. So I'm going to make sure I've got a perfect seal on here. So I'm just making sure that they line up, just giving it that little correction. And I'm going to take one of my small jump rings and I'm going to add on two of my closed jump rings. So one small, two big, and one of these I can see wasn't perfectly closed, so I'm just going to correct that as well, like so. And then we're going to take another open 6mm jump ring, and I'm going to go through both of those large ones. So you can see by having two already closed and only two I'm working with, I've got a nice little 2-on-2 link. So I've got two large, two small, and then I'm going to add on two large onto these as well. So again, taking an open through the two small and closing that off. And again, because your jump rings are going to have that little spring back, Just make sure you can get that seal as tight as possible. I'll show you again on this one. So open through the two small ones, and when you bring them together, you can actually hear them almost rub together, and I just go slightly past the join, because when you line them up, when they're closed, it's perfect when you're holding it, but when you let go, it slightly springs back. So if you actually just take it beyond that point, once you let go, it will spring back to a perfect closed position. So now I've got 3 links that are both double jump rings. So 2 big, 2 small, and 2 big. You can just about see those are the large ones there. And we've got this lovely little chain. Now this is a 2-on-2 link. So again, a really popular chainmail weave. And you can make really beautiful chains out of this. But we're going to slightly jazz it up by adding in that accent colour. And by all means, you could do it in the same colour. It's just I really like the contrast of mixed metals. And that's a very popular look at the moment as well. Now to make this a little bit easier for me to hold, I'm going to add in 1 small jump ring on one side of my large jump rings, just the one. And that's just going to mean that I can hold it and keep some of these larger jump rings together a little easier. Now my accent jump ring is going to sit circling completely around my small jump rings. So it's going to be sandwiched in between the big ones, and it's just going to sit all the way around the small ones. And this is why we open it up a little bit wider than some of the other ones as well. So you can see I've got my 2 large jump rings. I'm going to take my big jump ring in the rose gold, and I'm going to go in between those. So on those left-hand jump rings, I'm sandwiched in between them. They're coming around my small ones, and I'm just going to slightly readjust my grip, which will mean that I can then separate out these 2 jump rings at the top. So I'm rotating my wrist around, which allows me to get that second jump ring on the other side, and I can split them open like so. And then we'll close this off. So again, just that little tap backwards, which will allow it to then, as it sits down, be perfectly closed. So you can see if I line those up, you've now got your 2 silvers, your lovely rose gold one sandwiched in between them, and your 2 silvers. And if I turn that up, you can see that that rose gold just sits sandwiched in between them, and it circles around your smaller jump rings. Now this is really all you need for a pair of earrings, just one little cluster of your Helm weave, but obviously you could make them as long as you want. If you've got longer hair and you want to make longer earrings, then that would be really nice too. So we'll do the same thing again to make a pair, and then we'll continue with the weave so that we can make our bracelet as well. So 2 perfectly closed silver jump rings, and I've got some of my open ones prepped. So we'll pick up a small, add on my 2 closed silver jump rings, and close this off. Now here's a neat little trick as well. This is why I was saying it's really handy to have open jump rings. So I've just switched to my left hand to hold my weave. I can now pick up a pre-prepped ring, and I can close this off like so. So there's one step. And once you get used to working with your jump rings and you get used to chainmail, you can actually do this all in one move. And as we get into our bracelet, I'll show you a few little tricks, because as you get more comfortable and more confident, you can actually come up with like nice little quick ways of doing things. You can add on multiple jump rings in one go. It's just that it's a little bit trickier when you're starting. So you can just add on every single jump ring and you'll be absolutely fine. So again, my small jump ring attached on so that I've got that grip, my 2 large, 2 small, and 2 large. And we can always take off that smaller jump ring if it doesn't fit into our design for our earrings. It's just that at the moment, some people even use a paper clip or a clasp, just so you've got that grip. So my open rose gold jump ring is going to go in between my 2 large ones on the left. It's going to come up and around the small, and you'll see I just give a little rotation of that jump ring, which will allow it to come in between my 2 larger silver jump rings up at the top. And you could hold it with your round nose pliers if they're getting in your way, the bigger ones. You can see I'm holding it just on the edge. So by rotating it around, I can then split those top jump rings left and right, which gives me a completely open view of my rose gold jump ring. And I'll seal that shut. And there's my little helm weave. So 2 silvers in large, 2 small, 2 large, and the rose one sandwiched in between. Now to make my earrings, I'm also going to add a bead on. So I'm going to add on a bead up at the top, and I think that's going to replace these small ones. It'll be a nice look. So I'm going to add this onto an eye pin, and I'm going to bend the eye pin to 90 degrees directly above the bead. So you could use your pliers for that. I tend to be naughty and use my nail, but you can use that with your plier. And then I'm going to cut, and normally I would only leave 1 centimetre for my loops, but I'm actually going to make this one ever so slightly bigger because I want it to encase both of my large jump rings. And then I'm using my thumb as a stopper and a hold for that bead, so my pin is facing up to the ceiling. And ordinarily you can see how small this loop is on my pliers. If I put that loop, the pre-made loop, from my eye pin onto my round nose pliers, I'm only a few mil from the top. I'm going to take this a little bit deeper to create that bigger loop, hence leaving more than 1 centimetre. So we'll only go ever so slightly deeper down to create a larger loop. And then just that rotation of the wrist and small little movements will give me a lovely eye on the bottom of my pin, which is slightly bigger, and we'll just correct the rotation of these. So you can see where I bent my pin to 90 degrees. I'm just going to take this so that they're facing the same direction. And now you can see that that loop on the base is slightly bigger than the top, just enough for me to get in both of my jump rings. And then I'm going to take this little one off because I don't want this one on here anymore. It was just so that we made the weave. Now, if I open this up and remove this jump ring, obviously my pattern might fall apart, but we can just lay it down, making sure I've got it all in position. And now we'll open the loop. So opening it up just like we did with our jump rings. That's big enough to hold both of those and keep them flat. And we'll close that off so I get a nice sharp closed connection. I'll just neaten that up ever so slightly. It's slightly skewy, so we'll neaten that up so it's straight. And there we've got the start of our earring. So you could also put a drop on the bottom using a head pin, and then of course your ear wire will go into the top of this as well. And we'll pop this one in and close that off. And there you've got a really lovely pair of earrings. So it's a really nice, quick little way to make something that's very handmade. You've got obviously your handmade chainmail weave in there and that little crystal for that bit of bling and that bit of movement. So we'll finish off this one as well. And then we'll get into the weave again for your bracelet. So again, bending that pin to 90 degrees directly above the bead, leaving a little bit more than 1 centimetre so that I can get that larger loop, pin facing up to the ceiling, little bit lower on my pliers so I can get that nice larger loop, like so. And I'm just going to hold this in place and just twisting those loops so that I know that they're perfectly aligned. We'll remove our smaller ring in a minute. I'll connect it at the other end. So opening this up, popping on both of my jump rings, closing that off, and you can see you can leave either your small jump ring on there. You could add a pin, a head pin as a bead as well. We could have a little droplet on there. Can reuse that one, and we'll attach our ear wire to the top. So opening up, popping that in. And these posts are perfect. I think they're really nice with chainmail because it gives you that lovely stud in your ear, and then you've got all of your work hanging as your droplet. Really nice earrings. Okay, so to make our bracelet, and here's the difference between the two colours. So I'm going to finish this one off and we'll attach on our clasp. So you can see it's just a continuation of our pattern, and I'm going to show you, of course, because we were starting with 2 silver jump rings. So this is basically the little component that we've got in our earrings. So we'll continue to grow it so that we've got a length long enough for our bracelet, and we'll add on our clasps. So this is using our large and small in silver with the accent of the rose gold. And I've got a little bit here I've been working on, which has the large and the small in rose gold and the accent in the silver. So there's lots of different variations that you can create of it as well, with some gorgeous colour combinations. So when you start to grow your weave, obviously we're going to continuously add on to our chain. So this is effectively the end of our earrings. We've got our 2 large jump rings. So to continue it on, we're going to add on a small jump ring. And I'm going to do it step by step, adding them on individually. But when I add in my next link, I'll show you how you can have a little cheat at this step. Adding on our second smaller jump ring, of course, because remember we need 2 links for each one of our chains. And then adding on our next 2 large silvers. And there's 1 and there's 2. So you can see how handy it is having some of those pre-opened rings ready to go. So that's looking good. And then we're ready to add in our accent colour. So our large open jump ring. And it gets easier the longer your weave is created as well, because of course you've got more to hold on to. So in between our large jump rings over on the left hand side, circling around our small ones. Once I get to this stage, I'll just have a little realignment, just nudge my wrist back, which allows me to bring this second jump ring from the top over and in between. So if I turn this to the side, you can see I've got 1 on the left and 1 on the right. Rose gold in the middle and closing that off like so. Now, when you're doing your prep, if as well as opening some, you make sure that a few are perfectly closed, you can actually add on your second set of jump rings without having to open all of them individually. So we're basically going to skip a step. So at the very start, when you're opening some, just make sure that you perfectly close some as well. And I'll do this twice. And then I reckon we've probably got long enough for our bracelet. Let's bring this in. So I've got 4 here that are perfectly closed. I've checked that those connections are good. I've still got my open ones, and I've got some open ones in my smaller ones as well. So at this stage, when we're adding on our small jump ring, I'm going to add on my 2 final links from my bracelet, and then I'm also going to add on 2 of my perfectly closed ones. So you can see it gives me a little bit less room to work with, but this will actually completely skip out 1 step. So once my small jump ring is closed, again, I'm just transferring it to my left-hand side, and then my second smaller jump ring will go through all 4 that I've just added on. And again, we'll close that off. And you can see when I open that up and let go, I've already got my second link on there as well. So it saves me having to open a further 2 jump rings. So it's a nice, quicker way of achieving some of your longer weaves. But by all means, if it's too tricky and getting that second smaller jump ring through all 4 of them is just proving that little bit too tricky, you can go back to the original method and add them all on individually. There's nothing wrong with that either. You're achieving the same look. It's just skipping out that last final step. So you can see this one doesn't want to go around, so I'm just going to rotate it over a little bit. There we go. So by rotating it, you're just moving that open link slightly further over, just making sure that there's a bigger gap to get that in. Okay, so I reckon we've probably got enough for a bracelet. Let's just do a little check. Yeah, by the time I add on my links, my clasp, we'll be good to go. So the clasp that we're going to add on is just a lobster claw clasp. I find it easier than magnetic clasps with chainmail. Magnetic, obviously, with all the metal in your jump rings, can be a little bit trickier. And we'll finish this off with a small link. So I'll go back to the very beginning where we've got our small attachment on here. And we'll pop our clasp on. And I'll also show you a little trick with these, because you want your, ideally, you can see here, of course, our Helm weave is going to sit flat to our skin. And that means if I add my jump ring on at this point, can you see, my clasp is also sitting flat. Whereas ideally I want it to be facing up and down so that I know I'm going to get a nice secure finish. It's actually a bit easier to put on because of the rotation of your clasp. So if I were to put this on here and we were to keep it flat, it's just a preference. If I bring this around, so this will be flat to my skin, I now don't have the right connection because this will now twist because both of my end components are flat. So if we put on a smaller jump ring on this end as well, that's just going to give me that little rotation in the connection. And now they will fit perfectly together. And I'll have a completely flat bracelet, which is really nice. Now, if you don't want your clasp to be sitting flat, if you add on a second smaller jump ring, that will just rotate that angle around and your clasp could be sitting horizontally as opposed to, vertically as opposed to horizontally. And there, of course, is your gorgeous bracelet. So there's lots of different ways that you can do colour combinations. You could add charms around the outside of these as well. You could add little beads onto them, onto head pins. It gives you a really beautiful handmade weave with a very simple, once you've mastered it, technique. And of course, the colour combination and the size combination gives you that beautiful Helm weave. So thank you so much for joining us. I told you it was simple. Once you get the hang of it, and of course the nice thing is that you repeat the pattern, so you just get better and better at it as your bracelets progress. I hope you've enjoyed it, and remember we've got our other 11 days of Christmas for you to join in with as well, and I will see you soon. Merry Christmas to you all.